Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church in Eugene, Oregon. We're empowered by love. We transform ourselves and serve our world. My name is the Reverend Lois Van Leer, she, her, hers. With me today is our ministerial intern, Jennifer Hackett. Member is working Wednesdays. May each one of us insist upon a full representative and participatory democracy, as well as a culture and climate, not of mere civility, but of nonviolence and accountability. This is the time when we must remember that vigilance is the price that we pay for freedom.
In the words of Wayne Arneson, take courage, friends. The way is often hard. The path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. Mr. Arneson is right. You are not alone in your hurt. You are not alone in your anger. You are not alone in your frustration. You are not alone in wishing for a better, less violent, more understanding response to differences in our country. You are also not alone in your hopes for a democracy, a better one. You are not alone in your love for one another and this place that is our home country. You are not alone in your desire for peace. You are not alone in your willingness to work towards solutions. You are not alone today, right now. We are here, together, working to transform ourselves and serve our world, for we are empowered by love. Whether your spirit is heavy with the ways of the world, whether you are burdened by all that is broken and in need of repair, if you come desperate for just one word of hope to carry you through another week, welcome if you're here week after week, or if you have just found us, if you've lost your way, or if you're returning home. Rumi said, "Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come, even though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, even though you are welcome here. May our time together provide bread for the journey, nourish our spirits, comfort our souls. Come, let us worship. It is so good to be together." Here, in a time of COVID, keeping in touch about life events and important transitions in the life of our community can fall through the cracks. If you have a birth or a death or other major life events, please let Rev Lo or myself know, and at minimum, contact the office. We have a few announcements. The auction is happening. It's coming up on Saturday, January the 23rd. We're still in need of some items, products, events that anyone can offer. The weekly Connections newsletter has the form, as does our website, and it's being dropped into the chat. Bidding opens on the 16th, and registration will be coming soon. Also, if you're a visitor, we are delighted that you are joining us today, and we'd like to know a little bit more about you and to be able to reach out to see if we can answer any questions. So please look at the chat for the Survey Monkey link that's going in now. And finally, we are so happy that we have a board member with us today. Andrew Emmett is joining us. Welcome, Andrew.
I am Andrew Emmett, and on behalf of the UUCE Board of Trustees, hello. I have the distinction of speaking to you after the events of last week. This is not the place for me to enumerate all of my thoughts to you, and yet I yearn to do it anyway. Instead, I will invite you to a board social hour this Friday, January 15th at 6 p.m. on Zoom. Information is in the weekly announcements. For now, I will simply recall the words I wrote a few weeks ago for our newsletter. Not all of us have the energy or the means or the capacity to fight injustice, and surely none of us can do it all the time. But now is not a time to be timid or apologetic about serving our world, and let us not get in the way of those who are willing. Thank you.
We light this chalice, not because we must, but because we may. We light this chalice, not because we have the truth, but because we each come bearing and seeking many truths. We light this chalice in connection across culture, distance, class, ability, and language. We light this chalice that our religion may be a beacon of light and hope and justice. We light this chalice to kindle our hearts and our minds. And also today, we light this candle to lift up the lives that were lost in the takeover of the Capitol this week. May they rest in a peace that they did not know while alive. And now let us be called to worship with the words adapted from Jacob Trapp. To worship is to be in awe, under a heaven of stars, before a flower, a leaf in sunlight, or a grain of sand. To worship is to be silent, receptive before a tree, a stir with the wind. To worship is to sing with the singing beauty of the earth. It is to listen through a storm to the still, small voice within. Worship is the mystery within us, reaching out to the mystery beyond. It is the window of the moment, open to the sky of the eternal.
Spiral of life, tongues of flames, a fire descending, a flurry of light. Whom shall I send? Tongues lay the heated coal upon the top. Water rushes in to cool and cleanse. Send me. Called from within, called from without, awakened, shalt thou pursue? Whispering ordination, the echo of the call of the spiral. Come, let us gather round one another. Let us take each other's hands. Come, let us give ourselves over to the infinite spiral. Together, in trust, in faith, we call to one another. Come, come, prepare a way.
Reading today is a Celtic vow. I honor your gods. I drink at your well. I bring an undefended heart to your meeting place. I have no cherished outcome. I will not negotiate by withholding. I am not subject to disappointment.
In my first sermon to you in September of 2018, I said the following: you and I are about to live in sin for the next 4 years. For my time with you will not end in a settled call or a marriage-like commitment. And by the end of my time with you, you will have been in 2 serially monogamous relationships with ministers. Put your 2 developmental ministerial relationships into this framework. Practice for the real thing. That's not to say that any of the ministry done by my predecessor or any of the work that we shall do together is not real ministry. But it does mean that for some time now, you all have not experienced a ministry that was defined by the call and response of a settled minister. That call process wherein a congregation seeks out a minister to call their own, and a minister seeks out a congregation to call their own. And it makes a difference in the kind of ministry both can experience. It's the difference between living together and choosing marriage. After 35 years of working with couples who enter the covenant of marriage, I know that the ritual act of marriage changes something in a relationship. Whether you are partners of a year and a half or partners of half a century. My job over the next 4 years is to get you all ready for the marriage of settled ministry. Those words are no less true today than they were when I preached them 2.5 years ago. And yet I realized that somewhere along the way, I had fallen in love with you all, and that I was treating you as if you were mine and I were yours, one another's beloveds, that we were no longer living in sin, which indicates not only that it's time for me to go, but that you are ready for the relationship with a settled minister. And the work that we need to do together between now and June 20th is that of preparing the way, not only for a new minister, but for letting imagination, possibility, and creativity lead the way in doing church in a new key, if you will. Remember that lovely Celtic marriage vow that Mitch just read to you. Each of those lines can serve as a blueprint for preparing the way, not only for a new minister, but perhaps for doing church in a new key. I honor your gods. Our UU principles assert that each of us must engage in, quote, the free and responsible search for truth and meaning, which means that there is no one God, no one right way to think or believe above all others. The way the young adults in our movement have rephrased that principle is to say that each one of us has a piece of the truth. The reality is that the only theological center that Unitarian Universalism has is that of covenant. We are a relational faith that seeks to live into a plurality of truths, even when they are called by many different names. We honor the atheist as well as the theist, the Buddhist as well as the Jew, the Christian as well as the pagan, the intellect as well as the heart. And covenant is that which allows us to honor all of those. It's not easy work, this holding of all these gods in the chalice. And at times our truths bump up against one another. We are often offended by one another's either belief system or even our religious language. But again, I remind you to ask yourself, what if we led with a holy curiosity instead of judgment or outrage or dismissal of one another's truths and languages? In these times, we are called to offer radical hospitality, which means that we welcome not only those who think like us, who allow us to feel safe and comfortable, but to welcome those who are often considered other, those who push our buttons, those who push our boundaries and ways of thinking. And to do so, to offer radical hospitality, means allowing ourselves to be changed by being in relationship with those whom we have called other. In other words, every relationship has the potential to bring us something new, something that might expand our way of thinking or doing and being. Radical hospitality to me is about mutually allowing our hearts to be open to one another in ways that make room for the uncomfortable feelings that surround change or growth, which translates for us as Unitarian Universalists in today's world as offering radical hospitality to persons of color and those in particular who identify somewhere as queer, as non-binary, as trans. It means being courageous enough to do the work of unraveling the ways we have been conditioned consciously and unconsciously, to uphold and protect a culture that benefits we who are white and marginalizes anyone who is not. Radical hospitality means risking one's heart to find authentic relationship with those who are other to us. Radical hospitality is the oldest and the most current work of the church. I honor your gods. The next line says, I drink at your well. We metaphorically fill each other up, quench one another's thirst when we drink at one another's well. That statement is a variation on our first principle, which proclaims the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Just as each relationship brings us something new, it also holds the potential to offer us something of value or meaning that we may want to incorporate or take in or take on as our own. I'm fond of saying that I learn more from people who do not think like me than those who do. It does us little good to live only in an echo chamber. It might feel good, it might validate us, but all of our echo chambers have led us to this great polarization that is our nation right now. To drink at another's well is to find something life-saving in the other. I bring an undefended heart to our meeting place. You all have had 7 ministers in 10 years. It would be understandable if you chose to lead with defended hearts as you prepare for and greet your new settled minister. Maybe your hearts have been broken one too many times by all of these comings and goings. We all want what my friend Sean calls a cosmic insurance policy when it comes to relationships of the heart. And so you may be asking yourself, is this minister going to stay for a while with us? Do I dare open up my heart again and let them in? Can I trust them? There are no cosmic insurance policies, but a defended heart will not allow authentic, true relating. Greet this new minister with undefended hearts. Hang on one second, my dog is making a request. The next line says, I have no cherished outcome. You know, the church is not about me, me, me. It's about me in the context of we. Individual agendas have no place in community, for they create either dictatorships or hold an entire congregation hostage. Just as there are no cosmic insurance policies, there are no predictable outcomes. I'm asking you to give yourselves to this community because you have need of it and it has need of you, and to do so without strings attached, to hang in there in the good times and the bumpy times, to value the unknown as well as the familiar and the known, to trust what it is you all will be creating together with your new minister. I will not negotiate by withholding, which is another way of saying I will not act out of a my way or the highway mentality. It also means that I will show up fully in these complex and rich relationships of community, that I will say yes to the congregation, to this community. I will not withhold my time, my talent, and my treasure as a form of interaction or non-action. I will show up for this church, this community, my people, even when it is hard. I am not subject to disappointment. I'm not one of those who believes that the universe, the world, is unfolding exactly as it should, or that things happen for a reason or are meant to be. There's profound suffering in this world, and there's just no cosmic or divine plan that can explain away or justify the suffering. What comfort does the phrase, God must have needed another angel, offer a grieving parent whose child has died? There's neither purpose or meaning in so much of what happens in our world. Long ago, I realized I needed to give up on the question, why? Why the things that happen. And I needed a different question. I needed to ask how. How are we going to survive the things that happen? To make our way through and forward in our living? How do we make meaning out of meaninglessness? If we're wed to a certain outcome, we must then understand that we will be disappointed. Wanting certain outcomes stems oftentimes from a desire to protect and control our lives. I get that. Look at the world around us. I'd love some power and control. But once again, there are no guarantees. If we allowed one another the room not to meet one another's expectations, to allow one another to fail or fall short, wouldn't we all be a lot happier? As you ready yourself for your new minister, let your hopes carry you, but don't project a Messiah desire onto them. Don't laden hope with expectation. That's a setup for disappointment. Greet who is coming, ready to affirm what it is they bring and offer. Allow them room not only to be human, but to have areas of a ministry that are not their strong suit. You can ask anybody who's in a leadership position at this church what my strong suits are and what they are not, and they will be able to tell you, and there's no shame in that, because we've learned to partner with one another to address the areas that I have deficits in. And I'm asking you to prepare to partner with your new settled minister in the areas that they may have perceived deficits in, so that they and you and the church will be healthier and stronger. You all are simultaneously preparing the way not only for a new minister, but whether you like it or not, for a new way of doing and being church. COVID has brought Zoom and virtual church to us, which, depending on your perspective, is either a blessing or a curse. But church done both live and online is the wave of the future because it's actually an accessibility tool. Online church allows persons who cannot come into a physical space for worship to still be able to worship. You no longer have to live in Eugene to be a part of the Unitarian Universalist Church in Eugene. And if you can't make church on Sunday morning, you can watch the service at another time. Maybe you have a sick child or you're sick. You can still attend via Zoom or Facebook. I know nothing replaces in-person gatherings and that we're longing for them. But the future is both and Zoom and in-person for worship and meetings. Something that I noted to the committee that interviewed me as I was thinking about coming here to Eugene, it's an observation about volunteerism, both in our culture and in our churches. It's no secret that church is no longer the center of most of our lives. There are many other groups or organizations that we give our time and our talent and our treasure to. Church is something we do in addition to the rest of our other commitments and interests, which means that there are less of you to populate the old structures and ways of doing the work of church. But I got to ask you, honestly, how many of you find fulfillment in committee meetings? I so long for the church to consist of task forces that have discrete beginnings and ends. They have very clear tasks. You do them, and then you just disband, and maybe you join another task force to get something else done. Give me a project any day over a long-term committee commitment. Lots of folks are ready and willing to do the work, but few want the responsibility in today's age to have to chair a committee. So I want us to start rethinking how we do church in the present and into the future, rather than be committed to a model that no longer serves us. I know that certain committees have to exist for us to meet certain nonprofit laws. That's fine. But maybe we could have working groups and task forces for the rest. And here's a thought. What if we took December off from meetings each year? What if we took that time of darkness and expectation and hoping to slow things down to nurture our hearts and spirits? What if we only engage with one another socially or in the context of worship during that season of winter holidays? And what if, personally and as a church, we put some time into defining what is essential and what we are passionate about, and focused our church life around supporting those things? And what if we followed the energy rather than the drudgery of the work of church? What if we were bold enough to be able to let some things go, to know that some things just run their course and that new things emerge and can reinvigorate? Let's briefly talk about worship. Our theology, our beliefs may be unique or different from other Protestant faiths, but our orders of worship, the flow of our service, it's essentially the same as you will find in other denominations. We just use different headings or words. You all have been living without paper orders of service since last March. What if going forward there were no more paper orders of service, that you trusted that worship will and can happen without paper? What if we had more monitors set up in the sanctuary and the social hall for folks to see better? Or if we set up in the chapel for those who need more physical room or less neurostimulation? Or if we actually made space in our worship spaces for people who need to move during worship? Or created spaces for wheelchair users that doesn't relegate them to the side or the back of the sanctuary? What if we continue to make use of videos in our worship? And what if every Sunday was intergenerational, full community worship, meaning that all ages worship together? What if we didn't essentially excuse our children from worship, but had them experience and create it with adults? I've said it before, and I'm going to say it to you again. If we make worship accessible for children, it will be more accessible for adults. It will not reduce it to the lowest common denominator. And think about faith formation, what we used to call religious education. What if that was done intergenerationally? Meaning not all of us going off to our separate spaces by age, but if we learned and interacted in the same space together. It sounds scary, right? But think about it. Church is probably the last place that families have to be together outside of the home. Parents don't always want to be separated from their children, especially when it concerns matters of meaning making. I did know a woman that chose a church I served because she had 3 children in diapers, and the church essentially offered 1 hour of free childcare a week. But that's not where most parents are today. If our current worship structure isn't suited to this idea, then perhaps it's time to change the structure for all ages. And consider this phenomena of our youth, which I think needs some kind of intervention. They grow up in a parallel program. They come to their last years with us as youth. They go through a ritual called bridging, which is bridging out of youth group and into young adulthood. But so often it's also bridging right out of our churches. Because they've had those parallel experiences of church and community, when they try to be part of our worship, they find it foreign and lacking. It used to be that folks might leave church after high school, but they would return when they had children. The statistics simply don't support that for Unitarian Universalists. At the same time, I want to argue that Unitarian Universalism has good news. It is a saving faith or movement, but it's a proverbial light kept under a bushel. I get that we don't want to evangelize or be confused with those other churches, but we at least need to become faith literate. Folks are drawn to us because we are religiously expansive and socially progressive. Social action is something we do because for many of us, it's heeding the call to faithfulness, to be a faith that does justice. The future of Unitarian Universalism requires that we inhabit this living faith tradition, that we know something about its past, not rely solely on the past, but be active in creating its present and future. To be able to articulate what we do believe or aspire to, rather than what we are not or want to leave behind. As you ready for your new minister, I hope you will consider what you want your unique identity to be in the larger Eugene area. Churches like First Christian and the Downtown Methodist Church have an identity of working with homelessness. So in the future, when folks talk about UUCE, they will say, and consider that almost all of our social justice programs do not live here at UUCE. We belong to other organizations that house the issue. Is there one justice issue that will define you? If so, how will you engage in it? How will the whole congregation participate? Not just a small group of persons who have been doing the work for years. You have to know, in the words of Mary Jane Wagner, an Indigenous woman I once met, where you come from, who you are, what your responsibilities are, and where you're going. This isn't some casual drop-in faith. When the new minister comes, seek them out. Introduce yourselves, and like a variation on the old United Airlines advertisement, say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so, and I'm going to be your congregant today, and in the weeks, and in the months, and the years to come. Here's what I value. Here's what I yearn for." Let them know what this church has given you and what you have to give it. Let this new minister know that you all are engaged and ready. And just as they have come here ready to show up for you, ready yourselves to show up for them. But mostly, as you prepare the way for a new minister, I hope you will prepare a new story for yourselves, kind of like Humpty Dumpty. His story didn't just end all cracked and broken. And your story doesn't end with 7 ministers and 10 years. So yes, review your past with the lens of patterns and triumphs and accomplishments and joys, and be curious about the times of tension and upset with an eye for learning. Let the energy of past quagmires remain past. This church has been through a lot over the last 2 decades. You've had a reputation as being hard on ministers, and what I want to say to you is that is not my experience of you. It is time for a new story, a story that celebrates who you are and is open to possibility. You didn't implode. You're not a phoenix rising from the ashes. Yes, you spent some time wandering around in the proverbial desert, but you've been forged by the commitment, that fire of commitment to one another. You're a delightful people who are willing and ready to continue collaborative leadership with your new minister, to show up for this church in a myriad of ways, to explore the new galaxies of this faith tradition where none have trod before. I pronounce you ready to move beyond serial monogamy to marriage. As for us, you and me, I am still yours and you are still mine through June 20th. And all we have to do is love one another with undefended hearts, without withholding, without cherished outcomes, without being subject to disappointment. I will continue to honor your gods. I hope we will drink from one another's wells. Prepare your hearts. Prepare a way forward.
We know that today there is likely more on your hearts than usual, and we have space for you to express those feelings here now. Please join us in the chat with your joys and sorrows that you wish to share with the community at this time. For puppies and sunlight and nature and the end of medical treatments, for collaborative work towards solutions, toward new beginnings, and especially for the winds in Georgia, we are so thankful. For the loss of communal safety in our nation's capital, for our nation's dividedness, for all of the hurt that has entered our homes and our hearts and our lives this week. We hold you. You are not alone in this sorrow. And for all of the joys and sorrows that have been named by our beloveds today, and for those that you still hold in your heart, we pray with you, we breathe with you, we work to enact change for and with you. You are not alone. Love is greater than fear. Let us love our way into the world this week as much as we possibly can.
One of the things, the decisions that you have made as you move forward into being the church in a new key is that you are giving away the plate, not just one Sunday a week, but every Sunday of the month, 52 Sundays a year. Each month, one organization will be the recipient of the offerings of our plate. And for January, our community offering will be given to Carry It Forward, a Eugene nonprofit that provides direct services to the unhoused in our area. Carry It Forward provides everything from sleeping bags to voc rehab. Thank you for supporting Carry It Forward with your offering this month. For these offerings given in support of services to the unhoused, gratitude. May these offerings be transformed, that lives be transformed. Please join us in singing Building a New Way. Dear ones, you cannot hear these words too many times. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard. The path is never clear and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. May it be so. Blessed be. So be it.